Assalamu alaikum. It's 2 p.m. on Sunday and it's time for Converts in Conversation. Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name's Alice.
Hi, assalamu alaikum, I'm Almas.
Assalamu alaikum, it's Khadija.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to our show. This week our topic is connecting with the Qur'an. It was a topic we were discussing in our group, our WhatsApp group for presenters this week, as something that is quite interesting and something that definitely can be a struggle for Revert. So we've got some I think we've all got sort of in similar and different sort of journeys with the Qur'an. I know, Almas, we were talking before, so I don't want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
But I know you've had some thoughts about it this week, and I would say being the most experienced, mashallah, and the sort of fount of knowledge for us in terms of this journey with connecting with the Qur'an, and we definitely with the two of us sitting here who have, you have taught us.
Yes.
So it would be wonderful if you could start and just...
Well, if it's okay, I'll give you kind of a brief history of my connection with the Qur'an. I say brief, I have a tendency to babble on, so you can always stop me when you've had enough. But I know right at the beginning, and I was thinking about this in preparation for today's show, and I think possibly, now thinking about it, one of the first interactions that I had with the Qur'an sadly was negative, in the sense that I was interested to read the Qur'an, and I was told quite unhelpfully that it was a sin to read it in any other language but Arabic. So that kind of put me off straight away, and consequently I just thought, well, I don't read any Arabic, so that's it, Qur'an's not for me. So then later on at university, when I really wanted to know more about Islam, and I had Muslim friends, because it was the first time I'd ever met Muslims, was at university, a friend gave me a Qur'an in both Arabic and English. So I'd look at the Arabic and go, wow, I bet that says something good, but I don't know what it says because it just looks like a whole load of squiggles. So I read the English side of it, but to be perfectly honest, I didn't really understand much. I'm not saying that, I mean, I think I have quite a grasp of the English language, but just the way it was written was quite archaic, and it kind of didn't, it created this barrier between me and understanding Allah's words. I read it, thinking, well, this is a good thing to do, and I did read it. So then, by the time I actually remember my first Ramadan, and I heard kind of other Muslims saying, oh yes, how much of the Qur'an have you read? And I would say, oh, I've read this much. And then actually slowly it dawned on me, they were talking about the Arabic of the Qur'an, whereas I was only reading the English, and I sort of just hushed that up, because actually, again, coming back to that first point of kind of somebody telling me that it was a sin to read it in any other language, Arabic, well, obviously it's not, but having had that as the first kind of point of reference with the Qur'an, I didn't actually feel that I felt confident to tell anybody that I was reading in English. I felt that I should kind of hush that up. So I didn't actually know any Arabic at all. And then actually, after I got married, and it was one of my husband's friends who I remember saying to him, look, if I cook dinner, do you think your friend would come round and he would just kind of teach me some letters in Arabic? So and at that time, when I thought to myself, well, I can't really connect with the Qur'an, because even when I'm reading in English, it's not really touching my heart or anything. I ended up focusing on my relationship with Allah through prayer, through salah, and actually just in the prayer, just talking to Allah in English, like as if I would talk to a friend. And that was actually the main way I was connecting to Allah. I wasn't really connecting to His words at all. And then later on, what I would do is I'd get books I had topics that I was interested in to read about Islam, and then when they had ayahs or verses from Qur'an and they would explain it in English, then that made a better connection for me, because it was kind of to do with the topic. And actually, one of the things I have to say that really gave me that connection with the Qur'an was learning how to recite it. And I think that's because historically, sort of before I had any interest in Islam, the biggest interest I had in my life was music and dance, to the extent that I was actually taking professional singing lessons, and I was looking kind of to get into the music business. And so singing was a big thing for me. And when I kind of, with my little bit of understanding that I thought I had in Islam, decided that, I think I should try and stay away from music. And I know that's a whole different topic, and it's not something we're going to discuss today, getting to the is it allowed, is it not allowed, the whole music issue. But for me, I just thought that music is such a massive connection for me, such a massive part of my life, that I felt that I wouldn't be able to connect properly with Allah if I had something that I loved even more than that. So I gave it up, and I remember giving up, and I actually still remember it was like pain in my heart actually giving up something like this. And I actually remember crying about it, thinking I was giving up music and I loved it so much, but I did it. And then, subhanAllah, years later, when I learnt to recite Qur'an and recite it in, sort of in a tune, if you like, and listening to, beautiful recitation of Qur'an, I finally understood, that must have been Allah's plan, because I gave it up. I gave up music for Allah's sake, hoping that would be something that was pleasing to Him, and He kind of replaced it with my attachment and my love for reciting Qur'an. And then I think it just kind of got even better, because when I was given the ability to teach, that just kind of the whole thing was just, I absolutely adore teaching Qur'an. It's one of the kind of highlights of my life. But anyway, I've talked a lot, Alice, so maybe somebody else wants to say something.
You are an absolute fabulous teacher. I do. I sing your praises to anyone and everyone. Really, I'm just so grateful to you because for me, connecting with the Quran has always been quite difficult in terms of when you read. I'm glad you mentioned that about reading English translation. I thought it was just me. I would sit and I read a page, and then I have to start again, because was I even taking that in? And part of it, I wonder, being raised a Christian, I don't know if, Khadija, if this is something you experience, reading the Bible. The Bible is parables, the Bible is stories, it's tangible in terms of your reading a story. The Quran's not like that. It's at a higher level in terms of it's making you sort of think of it doesn't follow like a story pattern.
And even when there are stories in the Qur'an, save the prophets, they're not all in one go usually. There's kind of a bit here and a bit there.
That's it. So I mean, and even when you're reading the Quran, I say to people now, start from the back, because obviously I read it as like I would an English book, and it's Fatiha, and then it's Baqarah, which is like it is the longest surah. And I think if you start from the back, it's the shorter ones. And I've gone to sort of classes here and there where they'll start with one of those shorter surahs, and you read the English, and it's easier to take in and understand. Okay, I understand what the message here is, what the lesson is.
I mean, even when I teach Qur'an, I always start with the shorter surahs, the shorter chapters. And even though I say to my student, look, it's not like the Qur'an is harder at the beginning and easier at the end. It's just, I think it's just human nature. When you've got something short to look at, you can focus on it better.
That's it. And I just wish now, because I just thought I bought it as a book and started reading it like a book, and really, really struggled with that sort of connection. And for a long time, and I know a few sisters who actually, when I started doing the class with Almas in Ramadan, similar, been Muslim 7-8 years, same thing, not got to that point. And we all, for a long time, I would say, I don't understand the point of me learning to recite the Quran in Arabic when I don't understand what I'm saying. Surely I have to learn Arabic first. By the way, not making any effort to learn Arabic first either. Saying I need to learn, and then I look back and I think of my naivety, thinking, yeah, sure, Alice, you're going to, as a 34-year-old woman who's never been any good at languages, you're going to completely learn Arabic to the point that you're able to understand a holy text. That's absolutely what's going to happen. And I look back now, but it was an excuse to kind of not make that jump.
It's like a vicious cycle, isn't it? You say, well, I can't approach the Qur'an because I don't know Arabic.
Yeah.
I don't know Arabic, so I can't approach the Qur'an. It just keeps going round.
And that's it. And now, like, and I honestly feel sometimes things just come in your path at the time they're meant. And that was what happened with your class. And, you know, I know people, just quickly going off on a tangent, but it's the same sort of thing, who have gone on Hajj and Umrah, and it wasn't like they planned it. Like, literally, it was like, oh, do you want to go Umrah? Yeah, all right. And then it just happened. And it was the same with your class. Like, I decided, on a whim, I'm going to do it. And subhanAllah, I'm so glad, because now I get it. I get it now, even though I don't understand what I'm reciting. When you teach us, you know, the beauty of how the language works, like it's so above English and other languages that I've like briefly studied.
I think one of the other things that helped me really to connect, not just at the level of recitation, but to take it even deeper, because that's something else that I always remind myself. Okay, it's all well and good to recite the Qur'an, but there was a beautiful parable that was told to me by a person with a lot of knowledge, because I made the point to them, because there is this understanding that in Ramadan, you know, you should try and read the entire Qur'an. And I said, yeah, but what about somebody who can't read the Qur'an or reads it very slowly and can just about manage to read one ayah a day? I said, does that mean that they don't get that same level of reward from Allah? Because that just seemed really unfair to me. And actually, this person gave such a beautiful response, and it was a parable about two kings. One king writing to another, and they don't speak each other's languages, yes? So a king from one country sending a letter to a king from another country. So the first king writes to the second king telling him, I'm going to invade your country in 3 days. So the second king says, oh, this looks beautiful, I'm just going to keep reading this, and doesn't actually bother to understand what is being said, so doesn't make any preparations, and they are destroyed. Whereas the person who reads it tries to understand it, and one of the things that helped me to connect with the understanding was actually Nu'man Ali Khan. I had never heard of him before, but somebody mentioned him, and I sort of did a Google search, and I thought, oh, he's popping up on YouTube a bit, let me see what this is about. And actually, when he does the tafsir, or he does explanations, and he's very good, I think, because he takes one short ayah from the Qur'an, and then goes into depth, and it just blows my mind. And even that, I'm sure, is not as deep as you can go, but it just blew my mind as to the absolute beauty of it.
That's it. Khadija, really interested now to get sort of your insights. I know you and Almas were just having some interesting discussions there, and I know you are a very big reader. You love to read, so I'm sure you've got a lot to say on this topic.
Yes, alhamdulillah, at least I do love to read. It's one of my things. It's one of the only things that calms me, which is how I became Muslim, because I was reading so much. But speaking about translations, my first ever Qur'an came in English, because it was the one I got when I first reverted, and it was the small little, I can't remember where it was from, it's a small little Qur'an.
Is it blue?
Mine was white, but I know you can get them in blue, and it was the tiniest text. Everything had parentheses everywhere, and I didn't understand a word of what was going on, and it made me feel like I was doing something wrong when reading it. It was kind of like, okay, I'm reading this, but I don't understand. Does that make me a bad Muslim? And I remember it wasn't until maybe like a year later when I thought to myself, okay, maybe it'll be better because I'm not understanding this. And I didn't really understand the concept that there was different translations of Qur'an. I was just like, okay, this is the Qur'an, like that is what it is. That's the only way it can be translated. Okay, I'll go with it. So it wasn't until a year later I was like, okay, well, maybe if I could understand the Arabic and learn the Arabic, that would work for me. So I took myself off to a class, and the lady didn't speak English. Her English was very, very limited, but mashallah, I got something from it, because I was kind of like, okay, this is not working for me, but I understand that's alif. It was now looking back on it, it was like the most bizarre thing ever, and I did learn like the first 4 letters, but it just wasn't working for me, the fact that she couldn't speak English, considering that's the only language I speak. So I tried again, and this must have been like another half a year after that, maybe another year after that, where my friend was trying to teach me, but mashallah, she has a little girl, and her little girl was very small at the time, so it was kind of like learning a letter and then a cry, and learning a letter and no, put that back, and it just wasn't running as smoothly as I needed it to. So I stopped, and I was like, in this time I was like, okay, there's other things, there's other translations of the Quran, let me look into them. And I remember getting a translation, and it was the Qur'an Project, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I find that the way it's laid out, as much as the text was different, which I found a little bit easier to understand, but the layout reminded me of a Bible. And I know some people are probably not going to be okay with this, but that was very, very comforting to me, because that is what I'd grown up reading. So the way it was broken down, I was like, I can understand this. I can try and take in that's all grouped together, because that's all the same thing, and I would digest very, very little amounts. But it still wasn't quite cutting it. And then it must have been a good year after that. This is all happening in years, like I can tell. It's like a year after that and a year after that. But that's when Al-Nas's class came up, and alhamdulillah, I was like, okay, now I can work on learning the Arabic. And then I realised, like you did, Alice, I was like, okay, I'm learning the Arabic, but I don't understand the Arabic. But it sort of broke down a barrier, because it was like I could understand the beauty in Quran without understanding the meaning, which is, I feel like, two different things. I went back to look for more translations, and then I came across this is really bad because I can't remember what it's called, but it's like all over Instagram. It's white and it's got the blue Arabic on the front. It's basically like it's written like a story, but it's obviously the Quran isn't story, but it's written in that style. The only thing for me, I'm very visual, it's in one massive paragraph, so I would read and understand, but it was just too much to visually look at.
It was just too text dense.
Yeah, too much, way too much. And I think when you're trying to understand such a, like what you were saying, Alice, it's got such a greater meaning than the Bible does. It's like trying to internalize that. I feel like for me personally, it needed to be chunked. I needed to have some paragraphs in there. It couldn't just be one solid text. So now, this was only very recently, maybe in the past maybe about 9-10 months, I've found the clear Quran, which has just been like, it's literally battered already, because that is the one I go to, because it's just kind of like I can read it in one Quran and need to go back to that to go, that's what's going on.
Is that just English only?
Yeah, it's just English only. I do have ones that are like Arabic and English now that I can read the Arabic, but I still need that. Okay, I've read the English in that one and it doesn't quite make sense to me, so I will go back to the clear Quran, and it really has changed the game for me, because I understand so much better now.
So the clear Quran, like for people that don't know, how is it written? How is it compared to sort of maybe other English Qurans that people might have at home?
I think it literally just goes by its name. It's just so clear. For me personally, it couldn't get any clearer.
Right.
This is what it is, and it's like, I get that. Even like reading, because on Fridays obviously we read Surah Al-Kahf, and for me, reading the English was always a struggle, because I was just like, what is going on here? Like, who is this person? What? And then I would read it in the clear Quran, and I was like, oh, that's what's going on. Like, I get that now. And it's just clear.
And I'm guessing it doesn't have lots of things in brackets?
No. And it's got, like, everything is themed. So, for example, the story of the cave, it will put at the top the story of the cave for the section for the story of the cave. So it's kind of like, it's written very, very clear. I don't know how else to say it other than it's very, very clear.
It sounds like something I need to have on my bookshelf.
So I'm just thinking that I'm adding that to my Amazon when I get home. That sounds fabulous.
Honestly, I alhamdulillah, it really has changed my whole view, because I just thought maybe I just can't understand Quran. Maybe even in the English, I just can't understand it.
You know, that's one of the things that I want to say is that, I mean, I've taught Quran for about 20 years now, so I've seen lots of different people come to me, and, you know, maybe some of them even have maybe like a speech impediment, like a lisp or something like that, and they come with, sadly, this kind of negative understanding that maybe I can't read Quran very well because, you know, hey, I've not been taught or whatever. And I have to say that it wouldn't make sense for Allah, the Most High, to reveal the Qur'an in a language that was only for the few, for the few to be able to learn it. I think it's more about how somebody's taught rather than, you know, their own kind of level of education or experience. I honestly believe that everybody can learn to recite Qur'an, learn to understand Qur'an to a certain level in whatever language is their mother tongue. But I mean, Khadija, mashallah, I know is a big reader. I'm actually not a very big reader. It's kind of a running joke in my family that, oh look, Mama, because it's usually my kids who are poking fun at me. Mama actually finished a book, because, you know, I'll start lots of books and then I'll go, I didn't really like that. I didn't really gel with that one. And I keep putting them to the side. So, and I guess that maybe was what was happening with these translations that I was trying to read. And actually the breakthrough for me was I understood myself a bit better, and I realized that I'm somebody who understands by listening. I don't understand so much by reading, I understand by listening. So alhamdulillah, with the age of everything online, not that 100% of it is, you know, kind of trustworthy, but I started to listen to a lot of talks and a lot of explanations of chapters from Qur'an, of surahs of Qur'an, and I would discover which speaker, I could listen to their voice for a while, because I don't think I can listen to everybody's voices, and also people who I felt were speaking words that I understood. And I know there's a very big kind of caveat to that, by saying, well, obviously not everything that is somebody's opinion is going to be the truth, but I follow the understanding, because I had to, because I didn't know any Muslims when I was first a Muslim, and I didn't know what to read, what to listen to, that I decided, right, if I was going to do this for the sake of increasing my love for Allah, then Allah would help me with that, and I would listen to or read whatever I found, and if I started to think, this doesn't sit right with me, this is a bit dodgy, then I'd leave it, but if I found good in it, then I'd take it.
Yeah. And I think that's a fantastic tip for anyone who, when they come to Islam, because there is so much wealth of information. And what made me think there as well, because I think I'm using the Bible because that's the tradition that I was raised in, and probably a lot of maybe Western converts as well. But I think as well, it's important to kind of try to learn to recite the Qur'an in Arabic, because I mean the Bible, it was an oral tradition that the stories were passed down. It wasn't written for a long time, and then it was Aramaic and different languages, and then Latin for a very, very long time, and then to English. Whereas the Quran has always been, it has not changed from what I understand from when it was first revealed. And so that's why it's important to kind of, if you can, learn to recite it in the language that it was revealed in, having that connection.
I think also for me, when I recite Quran, I find myself, like, the shivers go up and down my spine, that I think I'm reciting the words that are God's. These are God's words, and it just, sometimes, you know, if nothing else, that helps me connect.
You know, I just get so mind blown, especially from your classes, Almas, when you learn different layers of how the Quran actually gets. It's just, it literally blows your mind that you could literally be learning for the rest of your life. And I find that, like, even when I don't understand what I'm saying, my soul acknowledges certain things when I'm saying them in Arabic that I don't understand in English, and then I will go back to it and I'm like, oh, that's why.
And I think, having read Qur'an for quite a few years now, one of the things I can definitely attest to, that it will speak to you at whatever stage you are in your life, and you might have read those particular words I'm talking about in English, I'm not even talking about in Arabic, but you might have read those particular words like a year ago, and then you read them like a year later and you're like, oh my goodness, this is exactly, I understand this now.
Absolutely. If you have any questions, anything you want to ask us, if you're looking for any advice, towards the end of the show we will sort of have a whole section dedicated to tips on how to connect the Quran, any resources, the clear Quran that Khadija was talking about. We will share links to that as well. I think we all want to buy that now. It sounds fabulous, sounds really good. So it's great to learn. We're all learning all the time. That's a really important point to remember as well. You know, you can be Muslim 20, 30 years and you'll always be learning, and that's the beauty of Islam, really. You're never going to know everything. But yeah, what I thought would be nice to talk about now is as a lot of reverts really do struggle with the learning of tajweed. tajweed, and I know definitely with more sort of formalised tajweed classes, there can be a different in the expectations of knowledge, and this is something that I definitely noticed when I first reverted. Obviously, I was still in my I'm going to become a sage of Arabic first before I start to learn the Qur'an. But a lot of people far more proactive than me had started trying to take tajweed lessons, and there's a disconnect between what is a beginner's tajweed course aimed at born Muslims and what is a beginner's tajweed course aimed at reverts. And I think slowly there is, I know I have definitely seen adverts for beginners classes, as I'd like to call it, for people who are reverts and new to the religion. But I do know that some people have had horrendous experiences where they've gone to a beginner's tajweed class and are expecting to recite Qur'an in the first lesson. So yeah, Almas.
Yeah, I mean, I had that where I remember I'd come to Manchester because originally from London, and I figured out the way to actually try and make friends really was to go to, they were study groups. So I'd gone to one, and the sisters who were running the group, bless them, they had done some tajweed themselves, and they said, what we'll do is we'll go round and everyone can read Qur'an, can read an ayah of Qur'an. So one person reads the Arabic, the next person reads the English. And I remember looking around the group and trying to calculate whether I'd be expected to read the Arabic or the English. And I was like, I actually felt sick because I thought, I don't even know a letter. What am I going to do? And alhamdulillah, Allah made it easy. I got the English ayah to recite because I think I would have just run out in tears otherwise. But so it's such a difficult, it can be a difficult journey when you don't know any Arabic at all, and especially being a person of colour, looking like I'm Pakistani and I'm not. People assume, but you must have been taught when you were younger, and I'm like, well, no. So it just, and they kind of look at me as if to say, I'm sure she does. She's just being modest or something. But I hadn't got a clue. And I remember that there was one teacher, may Allah bless her, she was teaching people Qur'an. I thought, okay, I'm going to go to her. She's going to be able to help me. But yeah, literally, it was like, here's the Qur'an. Please read this ayah. And I would just I'm very quick at picking things up through, listening. So the student before me, she would have read that same ayah. So I just blurb what I thought she'd said and hope that was kind of correct. And then afterwards, finally, I think the teacher kind of figured out that actually this girl doesn't really know what she's doing. She's just copying. But it was good in the sense that it was a small group. I think that is definitely, like when I take students and I start a new class, I always say I take a maximum of 10. I know usually, because sadly the numbers drop, not because people aren't committed. Usually, things are happening in their life. They can't perhaps commit at that time. So I usually end up with maybe 5, which I think is a really good number to teach, because it means that you can give time to the student gets time as well.
It just gives me, I would say, flashbacks to your classes, way back in the beginning. And you're right, people did start off, and then this had happened, and that person had to leave, and it was literally just, alhamdulillah, it ended up being the 5 of us literally in your house. I remember that so clearly. But in thinking about it, I think if it had been any other way, I probably wouldn't have, because you could give that time, I probably wouldn't be, I'm not that great anyway, but I wouldn't, she's giving me the thumbs up, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have such the time for you to take to say, and again, and do it again. But
I think, and I know Khadija's sat right here, and we're not supposed to praise people, too much, but one of the things I think that is important that Khadija, you must recognise that you had as well, was commitment and consistency. So I try and be as gentle as possible with students, because everybody has life going on. It's not like the Qur'an is the only thing that they're doing in their week. But if you can just give it that 10 minutes a day, or even 5 minutes a day, and even I'll say to somebody, look, if you even haven't practiced the whole week, just come to the class. It's better to stick with that commitment. And I think it's like that with most things in life, that you're trying to learn. It's kind of fighting yourself the whole time and fighting your negative ideas about yourself, thinking, I can't do this, I can't do this. Just if you think you've found a situation that you can stick to, then stick to it.
And that's where I think also the pandemic has been a real blessing in terms of, I know there is no way I would have been able to attend a face-to-face class with the various things and the pressures and the family life, working, all of this. There is absolutely no way I would have stuck at it. And because your class is by Skype, I have, I'm still doing it 3-4 months later, and I'm a person, I never stick at anything. Never stick at anything, and this is one of the only things I've ever stuck at, and I love it, and I really do enjoy it, and I see like improvement every week. And I'm still a bit slow, but I'm at a place now I didn't even recognise the letters a few months back, and now I'm actually reading. I can read it, and when people put like Alhamdulillah in a group chat or something like that, I can actually read the letters now, and I know what they're saying, and it's amazing. It really is wonderful.
I remember one of when I was at university, so I lived in like a typical kind of student house. It was me and 5 other girls, and I was the only non-Jewish girl in the house. They were all Jewish, and one of them was actually the granddaughter of a rabbi, so they kind of knew their stuff. I didn't have any religion really. I believed in God, and that was about it. And I remember one of their friends who's quite religious, they were just chatting, like laughing with each other, and one of them kind of pulled out the Torah in Hebrew and was looking at it and reading it, and I remember sitting there absolutely being overawed, thinking these people are so religious, they're so knowledgeable, they can read these squiggles, and and then now sometimes I catch myself when I'm reading Qur'an and I think, amazing. I mean, I used to look at Qur'an thinking this was a prize that would never be in my lap, that I would never get, because it was, how am I ever going to learn a language that hasn't even got English letters in it? But, I think it's just amazing. It blows my mind.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
If we could have a little quick chat just before the break about transliteration, because we've had this conversation a lot, and I would absolutely say to any Revert now that I know, because I didn't know at the time, and I think when you've grown up in the West and maybe you've only ever learned other Western languages, French, German, Spanish, etc., you think that is how all languages operate and all languages function. And so it's very important to be aware that transliteration can only get you so far, and you don't want to get to where I am now, 7-8 years down the line, having to relearn everything that I've butchered through thinking transliteration will get me there. And because you think, okay, I'll just read the transliteration. No, that's fine. But when you understand the Arabic, oh my goodness, it just made me realise how it's just garbled nonsense I've been saying. Honestly, it's really, so I would say, like, please don't, because it's so hard to unlearn. Like when even with Fatiha now, I have to make myself think, because it's the one you just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? I mean, I do agree with you, but I would add something to that to say, if you've got no other option, then transliteration is better than nothing. But to try and make it better than just that, if you can follow, like, say if you have translation of say Surah Fatiha, which you need to be able to pray, and so obviously that's going to be one of the first things a person, somebody who's converted is going to be looking to learn as far as from Qur'an. Then if you can listen to it, from recitation, find it on YouTube or whatever, and then try and follow it from the transliteration, then make your own changes to that transliteration, because I actually think transliteration is a personal thing. Like, from what I think, the Arabic should be represented by these letters, somebody else might think it should be represented by other letters. And then different parts of the world have different ways they pronounce specific Arabic letters, and they can put that in the transliteration. Like, I had that example when I was trying to kind of speed up my recitation. Oh my goodness. And but I was I was doing it at work, and I didn't have my mushaf, so I was using an online one, and it was
mushaf being a copy of the Qur'an.
And I must have been sort of a South Asian one, so the z sound was z,
Yeah, I was just laughing then, Alice, when you were talking about the transliteration, because I didn't realise how different transliteration was until I'd learned Arabic and learned to read. And I remember looking back and going, what was I saying? Because how I pronounced the transliteration is probably not what the person meant for me to do, but that's what I was doing anyway. But now I feel like, for me, transliteration is good when I'm reading a word and I'm unsure of how it pronounced. I go to the transliteration now that I can read Arabic and go, I'm on the right track. Whereas before it was just kind of like, I think that's supposed to be pronounced like this, and it wasn't.
So it's a good safety net check.
Yeah. And just to, I'm sorry, I didn't actually just explain what transliteration is. It's basically the Arabic written in English text, English alphabet, to help you pronounce the Arabic words, but it is helpful in and it gets you to sort of be able to maybe learn surahs and be able to pray, but it can only get you so far, because Arabic, the language, is quite complex. There are different tones and vowels and things like that as well. But I think with Fatiha, like, eventually, even if you have learned it through transliteration, you learn to pronounce it even semi-correctly, because you hear it everywhere so often. I think sometimes it's the other aspects of the prayer, the bits that are whispered and you don't hear out loud, that I definitely know mine are not right.
That's why I've done, sometimes what I do with students is, once they've kind of got to a certain level with their Qur'an and they can recite quite well, I'll usually ask them, would you like to go through the prayer with me, so that you can just check that the recitation of the bits of prayer that you're needing to say in Arabic are sounding how they should. This section of the show, we're just going to really run through tips, tricks, resources, ways we've learned over the years that are kind of help you have a positive experience of connecting with the Qur'an. I just want to share a couple that Zara, one of our co-hosts, she's not in today, but she sent some really helpful advice and tips that she uses. So one thing that she does is listens to the Qur'an on YouTube with English subtitles. So that's a really great way of doing it. And I like this because we've actually done this. What she says here, we've actually done this in one of our groups, and I actually found this really helpful. She reads it as a reference, so we'll look for ayats that are relevant to a particular situation. And I remember us actually doing that. I think we had a topic, one circle, and Georgie had picked out certain ayahs of the Qur'an about that, and then we read it in the English and then discussed it. And I actually that's a great reminder. I've forgotten all about that. That's really helpful. Almost like a thematic study.
Yeah. Has anyone else got any tips?
One of the things that I want to say, I don't know if it's a tip, it's more I would call gentle advice, is that I know that our show has focused quite heavily on recitation and how to learn to recite Qur'an and using that as a way to connecting to Qur'an. But I think it's a good thing to remember that not everybody will connect in the same way to Qur'an. For me, it was definitely recitation because of even now, what I will, if I find some recitation that I find beautiful to listen to, and sometimes I think, oh my gosh, I might listen to this because it sounds like music, and and then I think, well, actually I just find it beautiful to listen to, so I listen, and it kind of lifts me spiritually. But I know for other people who may be a lot more intellectual than me will actually find that they connect through the Qur'an by some sort of intellectual study. Maybe somebody is interested in words, and so they will find they connect through linguistics, or but everybody will find their handle to Qur'an depending on their own personality and their own likes as well. And I think that's completely fine. It doesn't have, there's no one way to connect to Qur'an. Just like we have different ways that we connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For some people it's through their prayer, for some people it's through charity, or however they connect. But just to reiterate the point that it's not only through recitation that you can connect to Qur'an.
Absolutely.
I was just having a think then, and I was thinking about what tips would I actually give? And going back and thinking about my journey with Qur'an, I would say just take it easy. Because I remember getting really overwhelmed, thinking, seeing all these sisters that were around me, all these sisters on Instagram, and thinking, subhanallah, they've just got such a great, mashallah, collection with the Qur'an, and I'm not like that. Why am I not like that? And then I wanted to just do it all at once, and then it was just too overwhelming. And you're trying to take in a whole, what's the word I'm looking for? I do this every week. I'll lose one word at least every week. But
trying to take in the whole essence of what is.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you're trying to take that in, apply it to your life. That's one thing I would say. It's like, whatever you read, whether it's just one ayah, try and apply that to your life. I found that really helped me when I understood what it meant, and I'm like, oh, okay, it talks about giving charity. Let's see how much more I can do in charity. And I would just focus on that rather than trying to just get through it all, which became my task, because I was trying to catch up, so to speak, to everybody else.
And I think if reading Qur'an becomes like a tick box activity, then actually that is the complete opposite of connecting with Qur'an. And the other thing that I kind of have to remind myself the whole time is, when I'm reading Qur'an, these are literally God's words. And even if I don't understand too much of what I'm reading, the fact that it's actually God's words that I'm reading, if nothing else, I feel honoured that I'm being given that chance to read them. And that kind of gives me that feeling of, okay, you know, God loves me enough to allow me to read his words, and I kind of try and feed my spiritual self with that.
I think as well, you know, Khadija mentioned this clear Qur'an, which I think definitely sounds absolutely amazing for new Muslims. And I would say, when you do get a Qur'an, almost like, you know, how out from Arabic we read back to front, read that English copy back to front. Like, start from the back where the short surahs are, because Baqarah is the second surah of the Qur'an, and it's the longest, and it's overwhelming, you know. So start from the back, start from the shorter ones, think about them. And I think the Qur'an, like Islam in general, you get out what you put in. And for a long time I sat on my laurels and thought, I'm not going to do anything in terms of, you know, I'll wait till I can read Arabic and understand Arabic before, you know, I start learning to recite the Qur'an. And for me personally, like, reciting has really brought me closer, and it's been just amazing. But I've had to, you know, put in that time, and little and often, like with anything, you know, if you try and take anything all at once, you know, it's going to be overwhelming. A little bit here and there, and really putting into it, because you will get so much out of it, definitely.
And I think another important point is to make sure that you don't compare yourself to other people. It's not a race. It's not kind of, you know, where if somebody else is doing something that you have to do the same or more. Do it at your own pace.
I think another tip I would give out is about finding a tafsir or explanation that you can roll with. So I know I mentioned the clear Qur'an, and mashallah, it's been brilliant in terms of understanding what is being said, but understanding the context also helped me to connect. So if you can find, like, it doesn't have to be something you're reading, because that can also put a lot of people off if they're doing too much reading, because not everybody's, you know, as into reading as maybe I am. Like Almaz said, maybe like YouTube, or, you know, finding a speaker that really can explain it in a way that you can understand helped me.
And does anyone want to share their sort of favourite reciters that they love to listen to, that they find peaceful, or that just someone they connect to, just for some?
I mean, there's one that I discovered recently, and even though he's not done the entire Qur'an, he's done sort of collections, and even then there's only one collection of his that I remember looking at it, and it was he's called Omar Hisham Ibn Arabi, and I remember listening, thinking, oh, it's an hour and 20 minutes, so that must be quite a lot of Qur'an that he's reciting. But actually, it was the same kind of 5 or 6 ayahs over and over. And I thought, oh my gosh, who's going to listen to the same 5 or 6 ayahs for an hour and a half? And that was me. And I'm still doing. And I go out and I've just got this playing the whole time, the same ayahs, and it's just beautiful. And again, maybe it's a bit too sing-songy for other people, but for me, I just love it.
Like, literally, Alice, I was literally going to say the same person.
Really?
Alhamdulillah, like, that is one reciter that I could listen to all day.
And what's his name again? Just so
it's Omar Hisham Ibn Arabi.
Okay, yeah, I've never heard of him.
It's just so it is very melodic, isn't it? It is quite sing-songy, but it's just so, mashallah, so beautiful that it literally can move you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
My favourite is he's an Egyptian Qari. He's passed away now, Sheikh Abdul Basit Abdul Samad.
Yes.
I love his. It really.
He's quite a slow reciter.
Yeah, and it just for me it really, and this is it. You'll find someone who their recitation will be so touching for you, but for me, it just really touches my soul, and it's almost like even though I've never been to Egypt, it. I feel like I'm transported to the streets of Cairo. I don't know. There's something about it's
I
just
understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Really is. But we're going to come to the end now. I'm so sad that this show is over. Honestly, we always seem to have so much to talk about. What we'll do, we'll share a lot of the advice that's given today on our social media over the coming week. If you have any questions, you need any support, any advice, please reach out to us. We're on Instagram, Converts in Conversation. We've also got an email address, convertsinconvo@hotmail.com. And also you can find us on Facebook as well. So please, and Twitter. I think we are on Twitter, although we don't use it as much. Converts in Convo on Twitter. But please join us next week. We're not sure what our topic will be, but we will share it on social media. We're going to go to the news now. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
And we'll see you next week.